Testing 1, 2. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is our least attended meeting that we've ever had of our newly minted Built Heritage Subcommittee, and can I just say, that's just fine with me. So before we get into trouble and something else happens that will cause a delay, we are going to start with the agenda. First of all, I wanted to say, I think I sent to everybody the article about Jane's Walk that our Vice Chair participated in. That was good to get to have a nice little article for you. Any declarations of interest? None? Just going to find a pen. I got one. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from April 10th, 2014. Anyone have any changes, or are they carried? Carried? Okay, so we'll get right into our agenda. The application to alter 60 Blenheim Drive. This is in Rita Rockcliffe Ward. I don't think we have any speakers, and so that's carried. Application, this is the fastest I've ever been able to move here. It's exciting. Application to alter 140 Howick Street. Now, we do have a speaker, but before you come up, I just want to pass the mic over to Mr. Smallwood. Member.
Thank you. We have a subcommittee that reviewed this proposal, and I am prepared to support the applicant's proposal as they've come forward with, which is not retaining the Tudor timbering on the bottom or the bump out and removing the cedar hedge.
And Madam Chairman, I agree.
Did you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to hold that, okay? And we'll come back, and I think we have are you either of you Robert Martin? Yes. Oh, there you are. Hi. Have a seat, though. So number 3 is the application to alter 300 Acacia Avenue, and I have no one here to speak on that.
Carried.
We're all happy with that one?
Carried.
Just say that these 3 investments are in Rita Rockcliffe are very nice.
They're all respective of heritage conservation in the neighborhood.
That's great. So that was carried. We have and what about the IPD, the demolition of 92 and 96 Hinton Avenue? Can we receive that? I thought you were going to just move the motion. Okay, so I'm on the same page, and now other people are with me. Okay, is that received? Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go back to our held item, which is 140 Howick Street. And we have 2 people speaking. Both are in opposition. And I'll ask first Sarah Baxter. Sarah, would you like to come forward? Come up here to this mic.
That's on there now. Okay. I've never been at one of these, so I'm not sure how this goes first. I sort of assumed I'd be responding, but I can introduce myself.
Well, we're prepared to do a presentation if anyone needs it. Staff are prepared for that, but you're here, you are...
I'm here as the homeowner.
That's right.
And a Rockcliffe resident, and we have purchased and are making plans to work on 140 Howick. Our thoughts were that we were really trying to create something that respected the feeling of the street, the feeling of the village, respecting the footprint, the height, not change the feeling of the place too much, but capture what we thought the house was really there and enhance it in the process. We had a little bit, and I apologize for a little bit of the mess, when we first approached the city about this. There was some confusion, and we were told it was only a variance issue. It was a new staff member, and it was someone not from Ottawa who was talking to him, so there was a confusion on both parts. I contacted Village because I live in Rockcliffe, and I was told we would have to go through Heritage. And I contacted Leslie Collins, and she saw me right away, which was very much appreciated. At this point, she expressed some concerns about removing the bay and the timbers. And we tried to work with that. And I thought, not to embarrass him, but I thought I hired the best architect to be able to do that, which is Robert Martin. He knows Tudor, he knows Heritage, he knows the area. And I don't feel we were able to come up with something that made that work. It didn't read as authentic to me and as genuine. And he can talk more as to his assessment of what was original and what wasn't. So he's prepared revised plans which respond to Rockcliffe Village's concerns. They found the original plans had a little bit too grand a front door and overpowering window. So those were changed. And we were feeling optimistic. Our neighbors are very supportive. Residents I know are very supportive. We really tried. We thought we were respecting the feeling of it. So this has all been a little confusing. But I hope you'll find that we were respecting the heritage feeling of the street, village, and house.
So can I just ask you a question then?
Sure.
So in the report recommendations, the one that you object to is item 1B, the retention of the Tudor half timbering details?
Well, the timbers are on the bay windows, so we were, okay. I can't read anything. We're objecting to keeping the bay windows, keeping the timbers. The timbers go around the house. When Leslie first asked me about that, I actually didn't even know because they weren't really the defining quality as far as I saw at the house. They go around 2.5 sides of the house, but only on the ground floor, which is not typical, or even, it's very rare. It's not a Tudor quality to have it on the ground floor. And then the further recommendation by the city has been to keep the cedar hedge, which is in front of the house. It goes around the house, but we were proposing to remove the cedar hedge that's in the front of the house. Hadn't exactly determined how much, but I'd like to be able to remove it. The city has recommended that not more than 20 meters of the 40 meters of hedge be removed. It's a very aggressive hedge. It's been described by neighbors as hostile. It's thick, it's dense, it blocks not only this house. I don't think anyone on the street could have even told me what the house looks like, let alone whether there's timbers, but because of this very aggressive hedge. It's even noted in terms of the Heritage Survey and Evaluation Form from some years ago that hedge was an anomaly. I would love to keep it on the sides and the back, of course, to respect everyone's privacy and sense of space, but I think removing it does actually make it more consistent with the streetscape and the feeling of yard, garden, pathways that's indicative of Rockcliffe.
Good.
And the tree, she also noted the tree shouldn't be removed. The tree is under 50 centimeters. It's 45 centimeters. I've had a private arborist measure it. My understanding is that there is, I don't understand why it would be a heritage tree.
Okay. So I know that we have two members who are very knowledgeable about this particular property. One being the councillor and certainly Member Smallwood as well. Does anyone have any questions? For Ms. Baxter.
Just to clarify, what is it you're asking us to consider in this report?
I'm asking that the approval of our plans not be conditional upon the removal of the bay, the retention of the timbers, the retention of 20 meters of cedar hedge, and the retention of the tree that's in front of the house.
And
No conditions.
Does the hedge on the so-called west end, I would call it the south end because my orientation is never very good,
think it's the east, but front hedge.
You say it's shields your neighbor?
Oh, the ones on the side we're happy with. So
Well,
the
that's what I
north,
thought it was, the side.
no, I believe the front is the city's concern.
You're not talking about taking the side down.
No.
And that very nice tree is not a heritage tree? Have you know that anything over, what is it, 25 centimeters, Leslie, is 50?
I was told it was 50 by the arborist.
So
The
there's
distinctive
50.
tree bylaw applies to trees over 50 centimeters in diameter. However, the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District guidelines has guidelines around the retention of mature trees, and it doesn't provide any
It doesn't supply any width. Okay.
size.
The problem is it's right in front of the front door, so the pathway has to go around it. I don't think that really, I think that does affect the feeling that, the first thing you see when you get to a house is you walk up to the front door. You have to keep a very narrow path, because of course Rockcliffe doesn't want very wide paths at the front, and to have to, go around a tree, which also has branches going over the house now. I don't know whether the city's proposing looking after the tree, like the branches go over the house.
Whose property is the tree on?
My property.
It's on your property. And it doesn't appear in the pictures to be that close to the front of the house.
No, it's just in the line with the front door.
Yeah. But I think that the bigger issues would be the cedar hedge.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're...
So I'm not trying to confuse things.
No, that's okay, because we've...
I don't really know where to
east,
start and
west,
end.
north, south, and these guys are working on something to the side. They're horse trading. Anyway, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Baxter? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Robert? Yes, thank you. Mr. Martin? No, this is the architect. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of committee. As Ms. Baxter had provided the introduction, I won't dwell on that too much, but we assessed this house as a very modest, sort of original, what we call Georgian four-square, in terms of its symmetry and layout. And most importantly, we're very confident that the Tudor timbering, and especially one of the bays, is not original to the house. It was a later addition. It was not very well done. And the use of the timbering is not consistent with the way one would apply Tudor timbering. In this sense, the timbering is, or should be, considered little more than a kind of stylistic applique that was pasted onto a very plain house. And this is, in one sense, very consistent with many homes throughout the village where they borrowed from many architectural periods and styles. So our contention is that the bays and timbering are not original. They don't have any great heritage character, and in the same way that both the original owner and the owner that renovated this house borrowed from various stylistic periods, so too is the current owner doing a makeover, if you like, of the house, and again borrowing from a sort of early 20th century design detailing that is common in the village. So in this sense, we assess the house as being quite unremarkable in terms of its design and craftsmanship. And in fact, the city's own heritage assessment gave it a very low score, both from a landscape and history and design point of view. The primary character of the district is based on homes on large treed lots. There are, of course, homes that have individual designations and sort of higher heritage character, but this certainly is not one of them. As Ms. Baxter explained, we did try to come up with a number of designs that retained the Tudor bays, and it was most unsatisfactory to our client and to us We just couldn't come up with a scheme that worked. And then once we had actually made the investigations that confirmed that the bays and the Tudor detailing are not original to the house, that began to free up some different design options. So in this sense, we would strongly recommend that any recommendation to retain the Tudor timbering of the bays is not based on any strong heritage argument. And in terms of the hedge, as well, we find this a really kind of assertive and unfortunate aspect of the house, and it's again noted in the heritage character statement as being an anomaly in the district. So toward that end, we feel very comfortable that removal of at least the front portion of the hedge, while maintaining the privacy of the sides and rear, in no way impacts the heritage character of the district. In one sense, would make the house more consistent with its neighbours and the sort of open rolling park land of the district. Again, the sort of third, or the B item of, the C item, which is the retention of the mature tree. Of course, our first instinct is to retain mature vegetation wherever possible. But again, coming back to the more central, if you like, classical alignment of the house, the tree is placed in an unfortunate location that prevents any kind of axial relationship of the walkway to the front door. And in this sense, and I'm sure our client will be committing to plant additional trees, and there's a whole landscape plan that will again contribute to the maintenance of the heritage park-like setting of the village. So I guess in summary, we're asking consideration to not tie any of these conditions to the design. We think we've provided some arguments as to why there's no particular merit. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to committee, I'm going to ask Ms. Collins if you would like to comment on, obviously, the timing of the build of the bays, which has come up, the attachment of the looks like Tudor to the property, to, from your perspective, vis-a-vis what our architect and owner were saying.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff would agree that the one-story bay at the front of the building is likely not original. We had the same, came to the same conclusion as Mr. Martin. However, and also the Tudor half timbering. However, we do believe that they are of an age that they have acquired significance over time. So while they may not be original, we feel that they're quite old. We don't know exactly the date because the records are not very full, but we do feel that these elements have contributed to the character of the building over time and should be retained, because despite what Mr. Martin said about the low score that the building received as a part of the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District, its score still makes it a contributing building within the district. And all of these contributing buildings come together as one thing that makes a special place. So that's the job of the Heritage Section, is to evaluate the character of that special place and how these changes would impact that.
If someone on committee was to suggest that, for example, the removal of the cedar hedge is limited to approximately 20 meters in front, we've heard that Ms. Baxter said that she wants the side hedges to stay. How would that measurement of 20 meters change in your mind, in your thoughts?
The applicant's landscape plan illustrates the entire front street-facing elevation of the building to be completely open. So the orientation of the building right now is there's a house and there's a very large side yard which is covered by a hedge that faces onto Howick Street. The applicant is proposing removing the hedge completely along Howick Street. Staff are suggesting that while we agree that the size of the hedge in front of the house does interrupt the streetscape, and it takes away from the contribution of the house to the street. That the mature hedge is a very common landscape feature in Rockcliffe Park, and there are guidelines within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District that suggest retention of mature landscape features. So we are suggesting a compromise of removing the hedge just in front of the house itself, and then leaving the side yard facing Howick Street with a hedge along the front. So that was proposed as a compromise to removing the hedge entirely along Howick Street.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else that you want to say on this file before I come back to committee for questions?
I don't think so, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, who's first? Put your motion forward so we can hear it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Martin, you can step back.
Turn your mic off.
Turn the mic off too, that's fine. Thanks very much.
I would move that we accept the recommendations with the exception under item 1, with the exception of A, B, and D. Under D, that we allow the removal of the entire length of the hedge in front of the house on Howick. And part of the reason I think that I feel that way is because the changes that were made to the house and the half timbering have not been visible to the community, and I mean, I don't know how long. The house has been hidden, and I think what's proposed will be an attractive intervention on the house, and I think that the removal of the hedging will allow that house to become part of the street once again, so I think it is a good idea to remove it. With respect to item C, the mature tree, I respect the staff's comments about the treescape in the village, and would not want to comment and not have that removed.
Yeah, because, I mean, not removing it doesn't mean that you can't have an arborist come in and take care of and do the trimming and that sort of thing, too. So what we've got before us, then, the motion says that approve the application to alter 140 Howick Street according to plans received from Robertson Martin Architects on April 14th, subject to retention of the mature tree in the front yard. And
That's it.
not A, not A. No, he says no A, no B, keep C, and change D. And change D.
Change D to read, allow the removal of the entire length of the hedge in front of the house on Howick Street.
So the Howick hedge.
So the only thing that stays is C.
That's correct.
And the hedge still, it's not the entire hedge, because the hedge along the
Sides
sides
remains.
remains the same. Anybody have any questions on that? Yes, Ms. Collins?
I do. Oh, sorry.
Leslie?
I was just going to suggest that if you want to allow the removal of the hedge, you do not need to put a motion in, because the hedge is only proposed for removal along Howick. So the plans show the hedge retained on the other 3 sides of the property. So you can just eliminate D altogether and not replace it with anything.
Okay, so you're only talking.
Okay, so 1.21 then. We have 1, but not the A, B, C, D. We have 1, 2, 3. So the 1 would be the retention of the mature tree in the front yard.
Yeah. Madam Chair.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Member Quinn?
I have a question, I guess, either for Leslie or my colleague, Sandy. I walked up and down Howick Street, and it's a charming, small, narrow street. But I wouldn't say that this was the only hedge on Howick Street. I don't know, somebody sort of suggested that would, by opening it up, it would sort of be in keeping with the rest of the street. But in fact, there's a lot of hedging along that street. And I'm just, I thought it contributed, I could immediately see, I certainly thought that bringing it back to the sight lines for the full house made sense, but retaining it, I think, there's a bit of a rise kind of as you come up there, and I thought that it's significant. This is not sort of a 5-foot hedge. This is a significantly high hedge. I'm not a very tall person. So I don't think that it would be out of the question for the owner to get into some trimming. I thought that stood about 15 feet high when I was standing at the street, because there's a bit of a rise in the lawn, and then the hedge starts. It was quite high. But I certainly thought that trimming it could open some exposure to that side of the house as you approach the property from that angle without eliminating it completely. Yeah, so I was just,
So just let me ask you a question before he responds, because he actually, I'm sure, has the right answer. But my question is, when you admitted that you're not that tall, but when you're walking along the sidewalk, could you see the house at all when it was 15?
Yes, the house is there. It's not completely hidden behind the hedge, but you could, by lowering the hedge, you could, there it is. And you get to see the very attractive roof line as it is there. But I could certainly see how lowering it, it's also an incredibly healthy, beautiful hedge. But okay, that was my comment. That we hadn't sort of talked about the idea of lowering the hedge as maybe a compromise, but
It would become very woody, I would imagine. Member Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a subject that we have discussed for 20 years in the community about hedges. There isn't a right or a wrong answer sometimes, but one of the features of the landscape in the village is what's known as a shared landscape, and that's that as you look down the street, you see there isn't necessarily property lines often. There's a sharing of the landscape and an openness to the landscape. And the idea of hedging it off is something that a lot of people have been opposed to over time. So we have really had as an issue that we've dealt with individual homeowners is what their preference is. We really have not, in fact, in my own house, I had a hedge all the way around my house that closed it off, and we removed it, and our neighbors have done the same thing with removing theirs, and it's made the streetscape more friendly, and it's made it more open. So I think in this case you've lost the house from the street, and by removing the hedge you gain the house back in the streetscape. And I think you see the comments from the neighbors that there's nobody in opposition to the removal of the hedge. The immediate neighbors are in support of that. And I think that's why in this case it makes sense to allow the removal of the hedge, because it's something that's supported by the immediate neighbors and by the homeowner. And I don't think, frankly, that you're going to get a well-maintained hedge from a property owner that doesn't want it there.
Can I ask a question? Was there anything to stop, before they came in to seek changes, was there anything ever to stop them from taking the hedge down in its entirety before we started this process?
Well, the landscape is part of the designation in Rockcliffe Park, so technically, major landscape alterations would require approval.
Well, I don't think, from what Member Smallwood said, that he just said that did you get a...
No, and the people across the street just removed theirs, which was exactly the same as this. They just removed it a few weeks ago, completely. In fact, 2 houses across the street from me have just removed all their hedges.
Yeah, we have a hard enough time patrolling derelict landlords on heritage properties. Okay, I don't think the chances of us getting a hedge patrol are slim to nil.
Madam Chair, may I intervene? When the Spanish ambassador wanted to remove his hedge, the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association was very much against that, and we worked out a compromise so he could retain the entire hedge. At the exhortation of the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association, of which Member Smallwood was there the day we walked the length of the hedge, and we told the Spanish ambassador, keep that hedge.
Yeah, but he was crazy and asked you, which is my point. This is the thing. We don't, because you see, if he had been like Member Smallwood, who just on his own got a chainsaw and had fun, there's no recourse for us to go back and say, plant that hedge. There might be, but we're not about to do it. So, and now, we'll send Linda Anderson's bylaw people by. Vice Chair Podolsky.
Madam Chair, I think that the heritage planners do their very, very best to try to guide the interventions in this sort of wonderful heritage conservation district. And I think that we naturally must remember that this is a privileged neighborhood, and often the neighbors are the best monitors of community values, and the fact that this subcommittee of the village supports the changes and that the neighbors aren't objecting, I think is an important factor in helping us to assess the magnitude or the scale of the interventions. I do buy Robert Martin, the architect's argument that this is an unremarkable house. With no offense to the owners, it is not a worthy as a designation on Part 4 of the Heritage Act. It's modest. It's not modest in size. And I think that the makeover that is proposed is adopting some historical references for a building that already is a kind of hybrid. So I support the amendment that Sandy Smallwood has brought forward.
Thank you, and I think we're going to wrap up on this with Councillor Clark.
Well, as a person who's generally in disagreement with Leo, well, maybe not, I have agreement with the amendment. I also think, though, that if you still feel the tree's a problem, that you go to the Rockcliffe Park Council and get them to evaluate whether they would like you to keep the tree or not, because that's their policies we're trying to keep in place. And if you get agreement from them that you can remove the tree in time for the council meeting, which would be
24th, 28th? Oh, no, July 7th.
26th?
July 9th. June.
Council meeting in June. Good. So you got about a month to go and talk to Rockcliffe Park Residents Association and have them debate with them on the merits of keeping this tree.
Thank you. Anything else?
And then if you have that, then I can bring it to council when this matter gets to council, if there's a change in how we feel about it. But at the moment, the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association clearly has indicated a desire to keep mature trees. And that lack of definition means that your tree falls into the mature trees thing, just like the chair lady is the mature chairman.
Not as mature as you. Of course, there's different definitions of mature. One isn't always to do with age. Okay, so we have a motion, and I'm almost losing track of my thoughts here. This gets convoluted. No matter how easy you think things are going to move forward, there's always something that comes up. So we have we have the Build to Heritage Subcommittee accept the staff recommendations with the exception of 1A, B, and D. Do you want yeas and nays, or is that carried?
Carried.
Carried? Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out today. Yeah. Now, we're going to go to notices of motion, and I believe that Vice Chair Podolsky has one.
Yeah, on this
Notice of
item,
motion?
Madam Chair, this relates to notice of motion relating to the demolition of 92 and 96 Hinton Avenue. I'd like to move that whereas the notice has been received under Section 27(3) of the Ontario Heritage Act in respect to the intention to demolish a non-designated heritage property listed on the city's heritage register located at 92 and 96 Hinton Avenue. And whereas the protocols in place with respect to these types of notice should be clarified, therefore be it resolved that the Built Heritage Subcommittee directs that staff review the protocols and procedures in place for non-designated properties listed on the city's heritage register in order to determine a policy going forward with respect to situations arising under Section 27.3 and return with an information report for further discussion in Q3.
Thank you. So that's a notice of motion for the next meeting, which our next meeting is June the 12th. Any inquiries? No? Any other business? No? Are we adjourned? Yes? Thank you. I know. I know.
Madam Chair, we have an application in Rockcliffe, an application associated with the Brantwood Gates on Main Street. But don't worry, they're fine. And I'm being whispered at. Two in Rockcliffe, one in Centretown, the Brantwood Gates, and potentially a designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. So that's 5 items.
Thank you, everybody, for changing to agreeing to meet this afternoon instead of this morning. I had an opportunity at one of my schools in Barrhaven to be a mystery reader, speaking to 4 grade 2 classes, one of which was my grandson, Robert Steenbaker's. And he was so surprised. He turned purple. I thought he was going to crawl under his desk. Anyway, thank you. Bye.